Hello. I'm talking to myself. Oh, no. I'm going to sit if you don't mind. First, let me say thank you for asking me to come here. I'm grateful. Camera guy's going to love this. Watch. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this time. I customarily do not, in fact, I somewhat abhor sitting in front of other people and talking. In the great conversation, we bring people together, and I have the good fortune of being able to say very little, just having the opportunity to listen and create a space, a safe space where people can share differing perspectives in a respectful setting. If you're interested in learning more about that, we can talk about it another time. One of the things that I've been exploring lately that may be of relevance is not only, it's about decision making to some extent, and it's not only about the decisions we make in the world that matters, that materializes, but also the decisions that we make that are not so obvious, that may be subtler or less tangible, about the spirit in which we choose to engage, the spirit with which we choose to make our decisions. Quick reference to a local issue that I'm sure everybody's heard about to some extent, the minimum wage. Do we want folks to have enough money to have a good life? Of course we do. Do we want to do that in such a way that it adversely impacts our delicate local economy with, for those mom and pop shops who have survived, you know, the corporate onslaught, our welcoming embrace of corporate chains in this community? We don't want to hurt those folks. So we have the details of the issue. You know, is it 850? Is it 950? Is it 1010? When does it come in? And it's a complex issue, and it's an important social issue, and it merits being addressed. That's one commitment we're making. The underlying commitment, and perhaps the more important commitment, is in what spirit do we address that? Do we do it in the spirit of combat? You know, the kind of common, you know, this lowest common denominator of what we call democracy, that the objective is to get out there with the biggest stick and smash the other people into submission and therefore be winners? Yeah? Well, we have that option. We have free will. Or we can engage ourselves in our community with the spirit of compassion and cooperation, dialogue, and that terrible C word, compromise. Somehow that's become unsavory in our culture. So, the spirit with which we approach things profoundly influences all the outcomes. It'll profoundly influence, in this case, not only the numbers, but, and perhaps more importantly, the attitude and the tone of our community. You know, do we commit ourselves to the next many months of divisive polarization, of demonizing those who don't agree, you know, spending vast resources, both, you know, capital resources, personal resources, time, ink in the newspaper? I mean, you know, are we going to do that? Or can we still sit down and, like grown-ups, sort our way through this? Can we find our way? I'm holding out hope that we can. The point is that, or one of the points is that in the Great Conversation is like a support mechanism. You know, we work with lots of agencies and organizations who are doing important hard work to address social issues and justice issues and health and immigration and parenting and education. One of the things that has become increasingly apparent is that 99% of those issues we deal with are symptoms. And we are part of a giant Band-Aid building brigade. And that most of what we do is about constructing quick fixes as opposed to, addressing the symptoms as opposed to addressing the cause. Symptoms need to be addressed. We need Band-Aids. You got to stop the bleeding. Okay. How many more decades do we continue to focus on creating more elaborate Band-Aids? When do we really get to the cause? This is something that I think you folks have a sense about, and that other folks have a sense about, getting to the source, getting to the cause. It might be argued that the cause of the minimum wage symptom is our economic model. We have an economic model that, like it or not, produces obviously extreme income disparity, produces poverty. That affects education. It affects the family life. It affects just about every aspect of our lives. It seems as though we may have become an econocentric culture, where money and the economy is really the central issue. Is that a good idea? Yeah, it's a great idea, but it won't make any money. Oh, well, never mind then. Don't do it. Can't do that, doesn't make any money. There's no profit in it. If you listen to the radio, I don't watch TV, so I listen to the radio and I look at the internet, and the vast majority of the information that's being moved around is either directly or indirectly related to money. You hear a little few blips in news, and you always hear, and the Dow is up, blah, blah, blah. Or the Dow's down, or the NASDAQ is up, but the Dow's down, and it's like, okay, I guess this is priority. And I don't determine what priority is, I just watch. I just watch and listen. And I, do the best that I can do to measure from what I'm seeing and hearing what seems to have become priority for what seems to be a vast portion of our culture. Okay. So, dealing with the cause is challenging. We can say, and there may be those who agree or disagree on our economic model, and that's fine. But if in this example, we look at the economic model as the cause, there's a little bit further upstream to go on that. It too is a symptom, perhaps, from one point of view. You like that? You guys hear that? It's my knees, my old knees. What lies above it? We talk about going upstream. We talk about, when we go upstream, interesting metaphors, but if we go upstream, we're going toward the source. A lot of people, refer to God or Allah or Yahweh or the divine or the source or the oneness. We have many ways of referring. But interestingly enough, when you're going upstream, you're going to the source. And when you get to the source of the mighty Mississippi, what do you see? Well, you don't see much. You see some fields. It's like, this is the source of the mighty Mississippi? So there's the difference between the seen and the unseen. When you get down to the bottom of the river, you see that river. It could be argued that that is a symptom of the unseen. And often working in the realm of the unseen is far more fascinating and perhaps more productive and more worthwhile. Got to watch words like productive and worthwhile. It sounds kind of econocentric. Maybe it has more value. Oh, there's another word, value. Let's see. It's in our language, it's fun to explore a little bit. It seems as though that perhaps the most important work we can do, and this is just one person's perspective, is to work in the realm of the unseen. That's which we don't see. You know, if you look at the night sky, the eye is always drawn, or tends to be drawn, certainly, to the stars, to where there is material, to what matters. And yet, our science suggests that the vast proportion of the universe is void. So what is it about humans that causes us to focus on this minute, almost immeasurably infinitesimal aspect of the universe that's matter? You know? Why do we do that? It's a whole other set of considerations. I mean, I'd be interested in hearing other people's ideas on that. So, back to the upstream. What's upstream of the economic model? Where did it come from? You know, did it come from aliens? You know, came down and set it up for us and said, this is the way you're going to do it? No, you know, my perception is that we generate it, that it comes from within us, that our values, our principles, our perceptions of reality, our commitment to what is significant and meaningful has generated all of this. From the void, from the stillness, from the place where, just leave it there. So, if we are accountable for that, if it's our values and our principles and our perceptions of reality, do we have any kind of a responsibility or obligation or fascination or just, you know, like joy in the opportunity to examine it at that point of the source? Where does it come from? And how do we interpret it? And how do we express it and demonstrate it? And the reason I ask these questions is because, like I said, again, to, you know, connect it back, I look around and I just see really awesome people just breaking their backs to solve these problems. I see secondary trauma, I see compassion fatigue, I see burnout, really good people working really hard to do important things. And it's like sitting in the middle of a river on a little inflatable raft with a bucket, you know, and you're scooping water and you're trying to throw it upriver. You know, and people are working hard, they're doing their best. How effective are we? A lot of people don't like to hear that, particularly people in those organizations. However, every time you mention it, you see all the heads going, yes, oh yeah, oh yeah. How many mornings do you wake up just scratching your head and laying there thinking, why am I doing this? What difference is it going to make? So, if we're to look above that seeming cause of the economic model, if we're to look beyond that, we see that perhaps, and this is just a consideration, perhaps it's upon us to do some real deep reevaluation of what we generate as a consciousness. Some people embrace the idea of a collective consciousness from which everything emanates, which is again void. Show it to me, touch it, feel it. Where does it live? How much space does it occupy? It's in the void. The idea of talking to people about examining and exploring their perceptions of reality is anathema. People are really excited about getting in there and figuring out the new Band-Aid. Yeah, let's put some pink dots there and some blue ones there, and let's scallop this edge, and let's stretch it. Let's make it a little longer, a little wider. That'll work. Yeah, but it's going to cost so much. Yeah, well, okay. But when you start thinking, when one begins to think about one's own values and principles and perceptions of reality, and then to have the audacity to share that and to ask others to maybe give that some consideration, you learn some interesting things. You know, these are the things I believe, these are the things I don't believe. This is what I support, this is what I don't support. These are my values, these are my principles, these are my pillars of identity. These are the things to which I cling. We have seemingly a need to lock on to ideas, a fixed truth. This I know is the truth and I'm going to hold it like this. And that seems to be, a pretty common reality. Maybe we're hardwired for that. Maybe it comes at us, from our previous, generations. Maybe you see the elephant running at you and your hardwiring says, yes, he will crush me. Now, this is truth. I get to choose, Okay, so one of the things, and I don't know what the time deal is here. Am I over already? Would somebody give me a signal when it's time for me to shut up and go home? Okay, thanks. Time. Time is just a concept. Time and space. Where and when are we? Ask that question. And we lock onto these things that we consider truths, and we accept them, and we embrace them, and a lot of it's illusion. You might suggest that a lot of it's illusion. Let me not make blanket statements like that. I try to catch myself when I say sweeping generalizations or things that may sound like absolutes. We watch the horizon to the east in the morning, and we still say the sun is rising. The sun is not rising. I'm sorry. We're rotating toward it. The horizon is dropping, okay. And is there any harm in referring to the sunrise as sunrise? I don't know, Is there any potential advantage in eliminating things from our language that don't express what we perceive to the best of our understanding to be reality? How much illusion do we consistently reinforce and encourage in our perception of reality with our language? This is just one small little piece. It was a common accepted language that told us that the earth was flat, or that our solar system was, rotated around the earth. Everybody believed that, and it was accepted. And now we suspect that something else is true. Now we're pretty convinced that the earth is round and that it rotates around the sun. If we're capable of being convinced that it's flat, now we're convinced that it's round, is there any possibility that it may be an octahedron? I don't know, but doesn't it make sense to at least entertain the possibility? Just based on what we know about ourselves. Seems so. And it's kind of fun. So, you've heard it said perception is everything, right? It's kind of a phrase. These are just things that come up in the conversations and in watching our community. We've done over 700 of these conversations. So we've had a lot of opportunity to watch how humans function. How difficult is it to really deeply evaluate our own principles? I think it's challenging. And I think it can be disconcerting, even frightening, that the possibility that what we've come to believe is inaccurate. Or that perhaps at one time it was wholly appropriate and wholly accurate, and that it no longer applies. It doesn't fit. It's like trying to wear your 7-year-old shoes. When I was 7, I could fit those shoes, and I'm still trying to jam my foot in those shoes. Walking around town like this, and my toes hurt, and people are saying, "What's wrong with you?" "Well, nothing." "Well, why are you wearing those little? They're my shoes. They've always been my shoes." I don't know. So, where do our values and our perceptions of reality come from? How much of it is interpreted through what we call the 5 senses? See what we see, hear, feel, touch, smell. How limited are those senses? Science, marvelous thing. Science has suggested to us that, lots of animals have a far greater capacity for interpreting a range of audio, signals than we do. Other critters have eyes that can see much more than we do. Smells, I don't know about touch and taste, but if we recognize our own limitations, or what appear to be accurate interpretations of our limitations, should that not give us pause to ask, how am I interpreting my perceptions of reality? How am I forming my perceptions of reality? Based on what? Starting at that point, is that maybe the source? Is that maybe the point where the river no longer appears as a river, yet it is being formed in that void, in that absence of riverness or matter that we think of? If we have the responsibility to do that, and we have the opportunity to do it, and we have the responsibility, or maybe we have the responsibility, maybe we don't, I don't know, but is it possible that doing so may hold within it the most profound opportunity for us to significantly influence those things we claim to care about? If we really go back to our values. Okay, let's jump real quick back to the minimum wage thing for just a second. What are the values that inform choosing the combat model? Why? Some people suggest it's personal agendas. Some people suggest there's personal aggrandizement driving those things. Some people suggest that we have been fed from pre-birth that the competition is a really good thing, and that's gotten distorted into our justification of hating one another, smashing one another, smash the other guy. That's the key to success. Create losers. Winners squat on the throne, and losers' bodies are discarded on the trash heap of compromise. Okay, how's that working out for us? You just take a look around and say, okay, that's one way of approaching it. Is it working? Is it giving us what we say we want? Do I say I'm a community leader, elected or self-anointed, however you figure that, and I'm going to go out and shred the fabric of community. I intend to do that because I intend to pit people against one another. I intend to get people demonizing one another in order to win, so that my point of view becomes dominant. So this may lead to questioning what real leadership is. What constitutes leadership? And maybe it's all okay, maybe it's just wonderful, maybe it's unfolding precisely as it should. In the Tao Te Ching it says that if you would shrink something, you must first allow it to expand. Maybe this has to become maybe it isn't glaringly enough obvious yet that we need to address this. And going upstream to address it at the source, I don't see another way other than to really deeply and courageously, because it takes courage, revisit, re-examine everything I think, everything I believe, all the pillars of my identity, all the things that make me feel secure. This thing I know, this is true. Okay, flat earth was true. Racism was true. Slavery was true. Education for the elite alone was true. Lots of things have been true. Who's to say that my perception of what's true is any more accurate than anything else or anybody else's? So I just want, I'm not the answer guy, and as you can probably tell, I'm not really familiar with this kind of setting where I talk a lot. But I have a lot of questions. And I guess I do chafe at just wheel spinning. Wheel spinning described as getting things done. Spending of energy and resources described as meaningful and effective work. You know, you can paint your house as many times as you want. You know, if the termites are eating it, it's going to fall. How do we get to the source? And if we as a species are the manifestors, if we do through our consciousness, however you define that, manifest all of this, then, you know, as that gatekeeper, if you will, or as that medium, are we holding and fulfilling our responsibilities? I don't know. I'm just asking the questions. If I have a collaboration, or if I have a circumstance or a situation, whether it's a conflict at the dinner table, or a conflict in the workplace or the business place or the place of worship, what am I bringing? Am I bringing my own agenda? You know, my commitment to convincing everybody else that I'm right? You know, do I wear the mask of compromise and collaboration, behind which is hidden the stony face of absolute commitment to my own agenda? If so, why so? If not, why not? What's the difference? These are some of the questions that plague me or pique my curiosity. These are the kinds of things that go through my head when I'm supposed to be paying attention to my bills and well, why my coolant is leaking, and I just find it a lot more fun. So I have, you know, my bills, I sometimes forget to pay my bills, and the coolant's still leaking out of my truck. Does it make any sense that if we really want to change things from the source, from the cause, that it lies in us? It seems to make sense to me. It could be completely inaccurate, this perception. If that's possible, and if looking around makes us wonder how the rest of these ideas are working out, and we're not satisfied with that, maybe we should give it a try. Maybe we should sit down and learn unattachment. Maybe we should become attached to unattachment. Maybe we should bring that as part of our way of perceiving reality. Is it, you know, we're going to have a great conversation. You guys might be interested in this. Just a brief mention coming up on, I think, the 29th of the month, on whose God is it anyway? You know, do the Muslims, we're talking about the Abrahamic faiths, you know, and this is part of, you know, we have an ongoing series on faith and religion. Last time we talked about the role of people of faith in relationship to environment. But we're going to be talking about this business of if the Hebrews and the Muslims and the Christians all pray, do they all pray to the same God? Do they pray to different gods? If they're different gods, what does that do to monotheism? If one God is valid, then are the other gods invalid, and therefore the entirety of the whole experience of those other people, is that invalid too? And if we are the possessors of the true God, does it still make sense that we should try to save those other people by killing them? They're not going to go to heaven. They don't believe in the right God. You know, well, okay, so I mean, but it's a fascinating dialogue, and we have those kinds of dialogues. But the question is, whose truth? Whose perception? And once we lock onto a single fixed perception, are we not inherently limiting ourselves? When we look at the night sky and all we see is the stars, are you giving me the signal? Okay. When our vision is limited to the tangible, when we don't commit, it would be funny if we committed proportionately as much of our consciousness to the unseen and the intangible as we do as is actually unseen and intangible. So perhaps we can do that. Perhaps we can go far enough upstream to really deeply reconsider that everything I think, feel, believe is due for reevaluation. Maybe there's an advantage in that. Maybe that can help us move forward in everything from a dinner table conversation on. So, having gotten the signal, I'm going to say thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to share these questions with you, and welcome to the world of questions and peace.